The Lost Boy by Camilla Läckberg. Read by Robin Bowerman. It was only when she placed her hands on the steering wheel that she saw they were bloody. Her palms felt sticky against the leather, but she ignored the blood as she shifted into reverse and a bit too hastily backed out of the driveway. She heard the gravel spray out from under the tires. They had a long drive ahead of them. She cast a glance at the back seat. Sam was asleep, wrapped up in a blanket. He really ought to be strapped in with a seatbelt, but she didn't have the heart to wake him. She would just have to drive as carefully as possible. Immediately, she let up on the accelerator. The summer night had already started to brighten. At this time of year, the hours of darkness were practically over before they even began. And yet this night seemed endless. Everything had changed. Frederick's brown eyes had stared rigidly up at the ceiling, and she realized that there was nothing she could do. She had to save herself and Sam. She couldn't think about the blood. She couldn't think about Frederick. There was only one place she could go. 6 hours later, they reached their destination. Fjallbacka was just starting to wake up. She parked the car near the Coast Guard building, taking a moment to work out how she could manage to carry everything. Sam was still sound asleep. She took out a package of tissues from the glove compartment and wiped her hands as best she could. It was hard to get all the blood off. Then she took the suitcases out of the boot of the car and quickly dragged them over to Bad Holman, the island with the diving platform where the boat was docked. She was worried that Sam might wake up, but she had locked the car so he wouldn't be able to get out and tumble into the water. With an effort, she stowed the luggage on board the boat and unlocked the chain, which was meant to keep the vessel from being stolen. Then she ran back to the car, relieved to see that Sam was sleeping as calmly as when she'd left him. Picking him up, she carried him, still wrapped in the blanket, over to the boat. She kept her eyes fixed on her feet as she stepped on board so she wouldn't slip. Carefully, she placed Sam on the deck and then turned the key in the ignition. The motor coughed but started up on the first try. Though she hadn't driven a motorboat in a long time, she was certain she could manage. She backed out of the mooring berth and then headed out of the harbour. The sun was shining but hadn't yet had time to warm the air. She felt the tension slowly seeping away, and the horror of the night lost some of its grip on her. As she looked at Sam, she wondered if what had happened would scar him for life. A 5-year-old was fragile. Who knew what might have been destroyed inside him? She would do everything in her power to make him whole again. She would take away the evil with a kiss, just as she did when he fell off his bike and scraped his knee. The route across the water was a familiar one. She knew every island, every skerry. She steered towards Vaderabad, heading further and further out along the coast. The waves were getting bigger, and the hull of the boat slammed against the surface after each swell. She enjoyed the feeling of the salty spray on her face, allowing herself to close her eyes for a few seconds. When she opened them again, she could see Grocha in the distance. Her heart leapt. That always happened when the island came into view, and she saw the small cottage and the lighthouse rising up white and proud against the blue sky. She was still too far off to see the colour of the cottage, but in her mind she pictured the light grey of the facade with the white trim. She also thought about the pink hollyhocks that grew along the wall, most sheltered from the wind. This was her refuge, her paradise, her island called Grocha. Every single pew in the Fjallbacka church was taken, and the chancel was overflowing with flowers, wreaths, bouquets, and beautiful silk ribbons inscribed with words of farewell. Patrik could hardly make himself look at the white coffin that stood in the midst of the sea of flowers. It was eerily quiet inside the large stone church. At the funerals for old people, a hum of voices was almost always audible. Comments were exchanged such as, "She was in so much pain that it was a blessing," and the like. And everyone looked forward to the coffee served afterwards in the church.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?